This painting is titled The Banquet of Cleopatra, and it's meant to depict a supposedly real banquet in which Cleopatra of Egypt tried to host the most expensive dinner in history. She did this as a bet against her lover Mark Antony, who swore he could host a more expensive banquet. You know, rich people bets. But Cleopatra won by doing something that is hinted at in the paintings depicting the story. You see that pearl she's holding? Yeah, according to legend, she was wearing earrings that were made of the largest pearls in the world. Yeah, these pearls were beyond expensive. They were priceless. So, what did Cleopatra do? She took the pearls off, dissolved them in a cup of vinegar, and then drank it all up. All of that money right down the hatch. And I just know that that tasted nasty. Like, I get it, you're flexing your wealth, you're trying to one-up everyone around you, but a cup of pearly vinegar? That did not taste good. But why am I telling you this story? Well, I think that the historical one-upmanship is a perfect example of how comparison has been influencing our financial decisions since the age of Cleopatra. Honestly, even before that, I bet you that there were cavemen out there trading the best hunting spear so that they could get the cooler cave art. And we see the same type of toxic comparison bleed into our culture today. In 2012, the documentary The Queen of Versailles came out, and it showed the story of a Floridian family hell-bent on building the largest single-family home in the United States, modeled after the famous Palace of Versailles in France. The house is estimated to cost over $100 million to build. And I say estimated because even though construction started in 2004, as of this summer, it is still not complete. Comparison and wanting the world to see their immense wealth through this mega mansion led the family to face so much turmoil, both financially and emotionally. And on a smaller scale, I would wager that we each face the same comparison problem. Comparison is at the root of so many poor financial decisions we make, from overspending to falling into debt to risky investments. And beyond financials, comparison affects our individual happiness and fulfillment. Comparison is a mental health problem just as much as it is a financial one.
My hairline is so weird. My pores are huge. My nail beds suck.
So with that in mind, in this video, I want to dissect the psychology behind comparison, how comparison will keep us poor, and ways that you can break free from the comparison cycle. If you're new here, I'm Cara, and I make videos on the intersection of money, media, and intentional living. Once you're done with this video, check out my video on how FOMO culture keeps you poor, or my most recent video on how social media keeps you poor. And don't forget to subscribe to keep up with new videos. So here is one of my favorite quotes of all time. Let me know if you've heard it before. Comparison is the thief of joy. Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th president, iconic badass, and one of my favorite presidents of all time, is the person who said this quote. And I love it because it rings so true. If I reflect on when I felt sad or insecure or disappointed in myself in the past, it's very often because I was comparing myself to something or someone. It's like I am obsessed with scanning my life for what I think is missing. Meanwhile, I'm ignoring all of the amazing things I have going for me. I could have my dream job, financial freedom, incredible friends and family, a healthy body and mind, a happy home, but someone has cooler style or a more toned body or a seemingly more fulfilling romantic life or seemingly more exciting vacation pictures. And now, instead of being grateful for all of the ways that my life is incredible and fulfilling and joyous, I'm stuck feeling inadequate and less than. Think back to a time when you've compared yourself. And my guess is that you don't have to think that far back because we do this all the time. Whether it's big things like comparing our house to our cousin's much bigger house, but also with smaller things like how that girl's messy bun in class always seems so effortless, or how that one friend runs every morning while you can barely get yourself to wake up on time. When you think back on these times, think about how it robbed you of your joy in the moment. Why can't you just be happy that you have a house in the first place, or that you're in class getting an education, or that you get to sleep at night in a warm bed? These are awesome things, and yet we taint them with comparison.
If you stop comparing yourself to other people. You're only on this planet to be you, not someone else's imitation of you.
And social media only makes this worse. I cannot stop saying this in videos, but we know way too much about each other. Social media not only connects us to people who we'd never have interacted with pre-internet, but we now know their daily schedules, their successful careers, and how they look in a bathing suit. Plus, social media makes sure that that information is always accessible. This isn't just like how you'd hear it once in a conversation, feel a tinge of jealousy, and then move on with your life. The evidence of our digital lives is frozen in time online, allowing all of us to return to strangers' lives and compare it against ourselves. As another famous quote goes, we are comparing our behind the scenes to other people's highlight reels. And as we'll dive into in a second, psychologically, we are externalizing our source of validation. We're looking for things outside of ourselves and over our shoulders to find a sense of purpose and self-worth. But at risk of sounding very woo-woo, what we should be doing instead is looking inwards for that source of validation. In my opinion, so much of that comes from personal growth, finding hobbies and interests we're passionate about, and challenging ourselves to learn something new. And I feel like now is the perfect time to plug a way that you can dive into learning new topics and focusing inwards, which is through today's sponsor, Masterclass. There's a fantastic series on Masterclass by the Daily Stoic podcaster Ryan Holiday, and in his growth lesson, he talks about the power of solitude, about the importance of finding things that you can lose yourself in, like dance or art, and I have been loving his lessons on this. Because that kind of Stoic perspective on what's important helps me reframe where my energy should be directed. When you invest in your own growth, comparison starts to feel less important. You're not chasing someone else's dream, you're creating your own. And this is what I love about Masterclass. Masterclass offers lessons from some of the best in the world to help you explore what genuinely excites you. Ryan Holiday's class is incredible, and so are all of the classes that I've tried, from Gordon Ramsay's cooking fundamentals to Dominique Ansell's French pastry class, where I am learning to make a killer chocolate mousse. Or if you're looking to crush it at your business next year, there are classes on negotiation, sales and persuasion, leadership, building a startup. I personally want to take Martha Stewart's class next. I could go on, but seriously, you should check out the kind of selection that Masterclass offers. And what's really cool is that all of their classes are shot beautifully. They're fun to watch, you can stream them anytime, and you can even put the classes on audio mode so that you can play them on your phone like a podcast. Masterclass starts at only $10 a month billed annually, and right now you can get 15% off a Masterclass subscription using the link in my description or by scanning the QR code on screen. Be sure to use my link so that they know that I sent you, and a huge thank you to Masterclass for sponsoring today's video. Okay, so back to the psychology behind comparison and how we tend to externalize our source of validation. There's a concept called social comparison theory that explains how people perceive themselves through comparison to others. Basically, we gauge how we're doing in life by looking at those around us to see if they're doing better or worse. There are two main tenets of social comparison theory. The first being upward comparison, where we compare ourselves to someone that we see as better off. If channeled positively, this could be motivating. It could make us want to be better people and improve ourselves healthily. But on the flip side, it might trigger envy and feelings of inadequacy, feeling like we aren't doing enough or that we ourselves aren't enough. Take someone like Bridget Mendler, who's been in the press a lot lately for being a former Disney star turned space tech CEO. Mendler could be a role model for us to see that we can evolve in our careers and not stay pigeonholed to one thing. But her success could also be interpreted by some as proof that we are just not smart or cool enough to be successful ourselves. Now that's upward comparison, but there's also downward comparison. This is when we compare ourselves to someone that we see as worse off. Perhaps they make less money, are in worse shape, or went to a less prestigious school than us. Whatever metric we use to determine that they are worse off than us can also be interpreted either positively or negatively. On the positive side, that downward comparison could make us grateful. Like, wow, I'm so glad that I had the means to fund my education to this prestigious school that's more expensive. Or I'm so grateful I have a job that offers me financial security. But on the negative side, we might use that downward comparison as a way to boost our own self-esteem by distancing ourselves from their lower status. Like thinking, ugh, at least I'm prettier than her or more buff than him.
Right, remember you and I have totally different jobs. I mean, you get coffee and you run errands, yet I'm in charge of her schedule, her appointments and her expenses. And most importantly, I get to go with her to Paris for Fashion Week in the fall.
The reason that this is such a bad thing is, yes, of course, it's mean-spirited, but selfishly, it's bad for us because it makes our identities fragile. If our identities rely solely on being above someone else in some metric, then we are going to flip out the second that made-up metric hierarchy shifts. And we might just do anything to maintain that hierarchy. Yes, including maintaining systemic issues that oppress others. While I won't get into that in this video, it is a question to chew chew on? What are ways that we maintain hierarchies so that we can stay above other people? This idea of the fragile identity is similar to the one that I talked about in my video on the golden handcuffs. And in that video, I explain how it's important to have more than one pillar of our identity to lean on for a sense of place and purpose. In terms of comparison, if your identity is over-indexed on the idea of being better than those around you, you're gonna find yourself in a very psychologically vulnerable place. At risk of sounding like an old fart, social media primes us to be in that exact psychologically vulnerable place of comparison. With something like Instagram, we're often feeding into upward comparison. Like the quote from earlier, we are comparing our behind the scenes to curated digital highlight reels, the most polished and sometimes grossly edited versions of their lives. This is a weird analogy that I'm about to attempt, but it's like when you go into some fancy schmancy bathroom with floor-to-ceiling marble doors. There are other people in those stalls pooping, but you can't see them. All you can see is a gorgeous shut door, and then you see them when they come out. The toilet's already flushed, and they're fixing their hair in the well-lit sink area. Meanwhile, you have to follow yourself into the stall and shut the door. And if you poop in there, you're gonna smell it. You might even hear it. No one else will, but you sure will. And now you are stuck in a little room full of your own farts. Now in that moment, and stick with me here, is it fair to compare your stinky stall to the other people who are now fixing their hair and washing their hands in the nicely lit washing area with the lavender essential oils? Because they're not in the middle of pooping right now. And when they were, you weren't in the stall with them. That would have been weird. To extend my bizarre analogy further, people aren't taking cute selfies when they're squatted down in the toilet in the stall. No, they're taking the cute pictures in the pretty bathroom mirror. So remember that one, the digital evidence that we see of a moment is never the full story. And two, everyone is on their own journey. We don't all have synced up poop schedules, do we? No, we're all going at different times, and it's not fair for us to judge ourselves because we are pooping when someone else is washing their hands, fixing their hair, or taking a bathroom selfie. Anyways, thank you for bearing with me with that insane analogy. I love to incorporate poop references and jokes as much as possible in my life, and I feel proud of what I did there. But stepping away from poop analogies, how does this impact our relationship with money? I often say that money is a tool because it is. Hoarding money just for the sake of hoarding money is never a good idea. You should be spending or saving it for a purpose aligned with your values. But if your values or interests are centered around comparison and keeping up with others, then your spending is going to become a tool to quell your social comparison anxieties. Let me say that again. If you are not careful, comparison will drive you to spend money as a way to soothe your social insecurities. But it is never going to be truly successful because there is no final destination to those anxieties and insecurities. You're always going to find someone else to compare yourself to that has more of what you believe you should have. Always. It never ends. Back to the upward and downward comparison pieces, here is exactly how each of them can influence your spending. For upward comparison, remember that it can lead to feelings of envy and inadequacy. You see your neighbor with a more expensive car or the kids in private school, and so you spend to overcompensate. Maybe you buy an even more expensive car, send your kids to an even more pricey school, or you swap out your wardrobe with flashy designer pieces that cost way more than you can afford. This leads to overspending and living beyond your means. And this isn't just some hypothetical, this is happening all over. According to a NerdWallet survey last year, quote, 83% of Americans say they overspend, credit card debt often being used to cover the overage. And according to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau data in 2022, 24% of Americans have no emergency savings. Now, I'm not going to pretend that the comparison trap is the only factor contributing to those dismal stats, but we cannot deny that it is playing a huge part. Here's how I like to frame it. Every time you spend money on something where you are trying to keep up with others, you are actively denying yourself opportunities for a better life, whether that's better financial security, early retirement, peace of mind. Like we said earlier in the video, comparison doesn't just affect us financially, but also mentally. All that wasted energy spent watching the seemingly glamorous, better lives of others online, or scanning every person in a room you enter to see who has the better clothes, the better hair, the better vibes. That is all energy that could be spent pursuing personal growth, passions, more authentic relationships, or even real wealth.
Miss Carolyn Kraft seriously needed to pluck her eyebrows. Her outfit looked like it was picked out by a blind Sunday school teacher. And she had some 99-cent lip gloss on her snaggletooth. And that's when I realized Making fun of Carolyn Kraft wouldn't stop her from beating me in this contest.
Getting a good handle on your finances is about control, and we often think about that as control over your budget, your automated investments, your credit card debt, but it also means control over your emotional state, because ultimately our relationship with money is an emotional one. And the second that we let ourselves be controlled by comparison, we become feathers in the wind. We and our finances can be blown any direction, influenced merely by how others are living their lives versus how we truly want to live our own. And that right there is a recipe for disaster. So, what do we do about it? For the last few minutes of this video, I want to cover how we can break the comparison cycle. And no, after watching this video, you're not going to be suddenly cured of comparison. I'm not convinced we can ever fully escape our impulse toward comparison as humans, but I think that we can learn to reframe and redirect our thoughts. And one way that we do that is by shifting our mindset from one of scarcity to one of abundance. This means focusing on what we have versus dwelling on all of the things that we don't. Because just like how it's hard not to find things you hate about something, it's not hard to pick out things that you don't have. It is one of the easiest, laziest things in the world to do.
You think it's cool to hate things, and it's not. It's boring.
The harder but way more rewarding thing to do is picking out the things that you do have and are grateful for. What you already have that brings you joy and fulfillment. This can be as big as I have a healthy body and mind, or as simple as, hey, when I flick the light switch in my bedroom, electricity runs and it's working. There's this great quote that goes, gratitude turns what we have into enough. And that's the kind of mindset that combats the comparison trap. Similarly, we have to work on detaching from external validation. This is a toughie, I get it. I'm not great at it personally, but it is a journey that is worth starting, because by caring less about getting validated by the outside world, we can put our energy into validating ourselves internally by focusing on what aligns with our values. The social media world that we often compare ourselves to, let's not sugarcoat it, it often loves flashy and expensive purchases, model-esque bodies and faces, and lifestyles that look straight out of a magazine. Not always, obviously, but it's not hard to find these types of superficial values being pushed. It's hard to know where to start with this stuff, so here is what I would say for the first steps. 1, only follow people who inspire inspiration or happiness rather than envy. It's up to you as to who falls under this, and maybe it'll change as your relationship with comparison changes, but being intentional about what you're surrounding yourself with is really important. And 2, just spend less time in places that are designed to trigger FOMO. This might be online spaces like Instagram, but it could also be in-person spaces like an exclusive club or a luxury car show. Again, it's all about being intentional with where you're putting your precious energy. But what do you think? Are there other ways that you've worked on addressing the comparison trap, or ways that you've seen the comparison trap keep you poor in your own life? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and what topics you'd like to see me cover next. I have a bunch of great videos that you can check out if you enjoyed this one, and don't forget to subscribe to keep up with more videos. I have a bunch more coming out this month. Thank you so much to my patrons on Patreon and those on Buy Me a Coffee for supporting this channel, and thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you all, and I will see you next time. Bye!